What's up, guys, and welcome back into the channel. Brenden Schaeffer with some Cardinals updates here on a Wednesday afternoon as the Cardinals have made another roster move, second consecutive day that we've seen some movement, and this one is at least part of the move that we've been anticipating for a number of days. On b-schaeff Daily, we've talked about how Nolan Gorman had seemingly fallen out of favor with regard to his position on the team. For Ollie Marmol, there wasn't a lot of trust there, it seemed, in terms of him being able to. I mean, it just wasn't even a consideration that Gorm, or Norm, as we call him, could be in there against left-handed pitching recently. We just haven't seen it. And in fact, I just went back through the numbers. Since his last home run on July 22nd, Nolan Gorman has only played in 14 games. I mean, that's a full calendar month, and you've really only seen Gorman in there participatory about half the time. That's not even to speak of the number of times he came in off the bench and didn't actually start those games. Still was only involved in 14 games, has taken 46 plate appearances in that span of about a month, has struck out 16 times, a sub 200 batting average, very low OPS. I think he's slugging about 230 over that span. The on base is about the same. We haven't seen a homer from him in a month, and he's supposed to provide power, right? Kind of telling, too, that with Gorman struggling to that extent, the Cardinals still don't have a lot of other guys ahead of him on the home run list. Burleson is at 21, and then there was another guy, is it Goldie, that's at 19? But he's still tied for second, is Nolan Gorman, on the team in home runs this season. And as I mentioned on Twitter a little bit ago, if that's not a sentence that shows exactly where the Cardinals are, I really don't know what is. Yeah, Burley's at 21, Goldie's at 19. Gorman's still stuck on 19, hitting 203 for the season. Of course, it had been much lower than that recently. And the slugging percentage of 400 had dropped considerably over the past month, in which he has not homered. I also noticed, by the way, Brandon Donovan hasn't homered in the last 30 days either. So that's kind of another guy. His OPS is at least still like 650 over the past month, but Gorman's was in like the 400 range. Just not good. So the Cardinals make the decision today. They're going to send him to Triple-A Memphis. Obviously, we'll get a chance to hear some quotes or read some quotes anyway from Ollie Marmol as the media gets a chance here soon to talk with him at Busch Stadium. I'm here at home getting ready for my 4 p.m. radio show on KTGR. You can listen, and we'll react more to this news regarding Gorman on the show at 4 p.m. KTGR app is where you can find the show. And I got my Mizzou hat here on today, so I am repping. But as it pertains to this move, it made sense to me. And I think I teased it maybe as recently or as far back you could say as Sunday when I said I think Gorman probably needs to, before the Milwaukee series, be sent to Memphis so that he can get regular opportunity. The Memphis regular season runs through the 7th of September, so you can get him down there for regular at-bats, and maybe just feeling it a couple times, hitting a couple of home runs off some AAA guys would get him back into the swing of things. Maybe that's a very wishful thinking sort of stance, but it's better than the way that the Cardinals were handling him at the big league level, which was basically that he had fallen behind in the pecking order, even in terms of the games that he doesn't start, right? He's not going to start against lefties, and we know that. Against righties, he'll get occasional opportunities, but when he doesn't, off the bench, where you have seen Ollie Marmol stack the lineup with a lot of righties when they face left-handed pitching, you saw what the pecking order was. Nootbaar would get the at-bat off the bench. Burleson would get the at-bat off the bench. Gorman was usually third in that pecking order. Depending on matchups, sure, but largely I think he had just fallen that low in the pecking order for the Cardinals manager, and I'm not even saying Ollie was wrong to treat him that way based on the production. But when your manager has clearly lost that level of faith in you, I think that's when it becomes incumbent upon John Mozeliak to say, look, leaving this guy here is not any better than maybe leaving like a Jordan Walker in the big league level to not play. You know, Nolan Gorman's a little bit older. He's 24 years old now, but that's still a young player that you're risking maybe the next iteration of a Dylan Carlson, of a Tyler O'Neill type of situation where maybe more so Carlson than O'Neill, because we did see O'Neill have some more level of success, and injuries is really what held him back. But in the case of Gorman, we just weren't seeing the playing time for him, and that's not to say he deserved it either. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the job is super easy for this front office and coaching staff and manager to decide day to day who to put in the lineups, because they have their preconceived notions of certain players. Coming into the season, you would have said, yeah, Nolan Gorman should be one of the most damaging and productive hitters on the Cardinals. He's going to strike out a bunch. He's going to go through the spells where it doesn't look great, but then he is typically going to turn that around so that at the end of the year, the overall numbers are going to be there for Nolan Gorman. Well, we're getting closer to the end of the year, and the numbers aren't there. He's OPSing around 670 right now, and that's just not going to cut it for the role that he was designed to play. And then Ollie Marmol agreed with that by basically kind of taking him out of that role more recently, and he was a part-time player at best. Without being productive, it just made sense to move him down. The other part of this conversation, though, is who comes up. We've been talking a lot about Thomas Saggese, and probably not enough about how good he's actually been over the second half of the season. So JC, the AAA player who plays second base, he can play third. He's mixed in at shortstop, probably not often enough. I think he should play there exclusively every single day until the Cardinals call him up, because if that's something that they need to see from him just to get those reps, it doesn't matter if he's a great big league shortstop defensively. If he's even close to passable, that's enough to be able to spell Mason Wynn a day here and there, because Mason Wynn's going to get the lion's share of the workload. So I don't need to see Thomas Saggese be even adequate defensively at shortstop. I think you just need to get him the opportunity to where he's as comfortable as he can possibly be there. He told me in spring training, like, yeah, he's played some short. He's comfortable at the other positions more so, third and second, but shortstop is something that he could do if pressed. Now give him the opportunity in Memphis. I think they need to have a little bit more cohesiveness when it comes to what the AAA manager, Ben Johnson, is doing with his lineup, because the only reason that team exists is to help the big league club. At just like a very most basic level, that needs to be a line of communication that's open to where if Ollie Marmol or if John Mozeliak needs the lineup in Memphis to look a certain way, I know Cardinals fans say that Ollie doesn't get to make his own lineup. Mo makes it for him. That's not true. But Mo and Ollie should get to make Ben Johnson's lineup, plain and simple. So if the big league club needs a guy to be ready at a certain position, like it was with Jose Fermin for a little while, if they need him to be ready to potentially take on that role where he can come up and be an outfielder on occasion and can play around the diamond just to fill in against left-handed pitching in particular, which his splits aren't really conducive to that anyway, a la Jordan Walker. But those sorts of things are what you want to see in terms of things that make sense within an organization. The AAA needs to be utilized as a way to boost up the big league club. So to that end, I would like to see Nolan Gorman play every single day while he's down there. I would like to see Jose Fermin or rather Thomas Saggese play a lot of shortstop while he's down there, because there should be an opportunity for him coming up when you get to September. The way I look at it right now, why Jose Fermin? Well, you can look at Fermin and Luken Baker as being in really similar situations. Two guys on the 40-man roster who are kind of, at least in the minds of the fan base, you might think of them as quad A guys who come up for a little bit for a cup of coffee. They go back to AAA. They're kind of tweeners. They're not really big league proven players, and they might not be able to cut it at this level. The Cardinals have a couple of weeks to get looks at both of those guys, and I think sort of decide. And if you end up casting one aside to make room on the 40-man roster for Saggese, at least you might have had the opportunity over the course of the rest of August and early September to be able to make that determination. And frankly, depending on the moves the Cardinals look to make in the offseason, both Fermin and Luken Baker's spots could be up for question. Like, you can't option these guys ad infinitum. You're eventually going to have to make a decision. Are they going to be role players on your bench? I don't know the exact option situation, but I think they're kind of coming up on, we're going to end up looking at what that looks like as far as being able to option these guys in future seasons. So the Cardinals are going to have to make some determinations about them anyway. Why not do it a little bit sooner? And then if you decide, hey, look, we've gave Fermin every opportunity, it doesn't look like he's going to hack it with our organization at the big league level as a mainstay on our bench in 2025, might as well maybe make that decision September 1 and bring Saggese up. Like, that's something that you could potentially see. I'm not predicting it, but I'm just talking about the machinations of that 40-man roster and why it may be the way that it seems right now that it is. Because the Cardinals are still hesitant, it seems, reluctant even to make the 40-man moves necessary to get Saggese up here. And I mentioned we haven't really talked enough about how good he's been recently. 752 OPS for the season. I always kind of read off his season-long totals and say, hey, that's maybe not the best OPS in the world, but it'll play. I think he's got enough of a bat to be able to show it at the big league level if he's going to get regular opportunity there to play. And with Gorman being the guy that they optioned down, you would think that that could open up more opportunities for Saggese to play, not only to back up Mason Wynn, which is not really a valuable spot because you never get to play. Ask Brandon Crawford about that. But to play second base. No Gorman means, yeah, Donovan can come in to play second, and he probably will. I don't think Fermin's going to start every game. But the Cardinals may kind of say, hey, Ollie, we do want to get a look at Fermin and Luken Baker a little bit. So you might sit Goldie once a week more so than you normally would. You might sit a Brenden Donovan on occasion because, again, he hasn't really hit for power over the past month either. And then you'll be able to put him into left field when you have to, throwing Fermin at second base. But they also, if you had that Saggese option up here, could make the decision to plug him in at second base semi-regularly. He could play half the games there. Donnie could play the other half, and you rotate Donnie into the left field spot so that everybody else in your outfield, like Pham, like Nootbaar, like Victor Scott, could all kind of take a day off throughout the week, and there could be enough playing time there for Saggese. I think the Cardinals think it's still a bit of a tight squeeze, and while you have the minor league season still ongoing, and you would like to maybe see Saggese a little bit more at shortstop just to get him that repetition, I think that would be the way that this next couple of weeks should unfold. And if it's kind of getting to a point where the Cardinals could keep losing all of these games. And by the time we talk about getting JC up here, it's not really an option to save the season anymore. It's just like it's already over. For a lot of Cardinals fans, you may already feel that way. There's several games below 500. They're, I think, approximately 150 games out of first place in the Central. I got to check my math on that, but it's somewhere in that vicinity. So these are the types of conversations that you can still have, but it may be more with an eye on what happens in 2025. And the more the Cardinals definitively, and you'll be able to tell with Ollie Marmol's lineup calls, which is a tough spot for him because he may have an idea. John Mozeliak may have told him, like, I'm stepping down after this year, or no, I'm staying through my contract. Maybe they've talked about it. Maybe they haven't. If Mo stays, Ollie should feel pretty decent about his potential to be able to stay. But I don't think Cardinals fans are going to accept movement that doesn't include some changes toward the top of the organization. So I don't know what the plan is going to be for Mo. We know his contract runs through 2025, but if he's planning on seeing that through as the Pobo and not maybe stepping into an advisory role behind somebody else that steps into his role, then what is the changes potentially? What do that look like on the coaching staff and on the managerial front, in addition to player personnel, so that you can at least tell Cardinals fans, like, look, we're still trying to shake things up because we know that we lost again, and that's not acceptable. So I don't really know what that's going to look like. Perhaps those conversations have happened between Ollie and Mozeliak, and if so, if Ollie has been given some guarantee or some language to say, hey, look, you're under contract, and we understand that this is not on you, what's happened this year. Now, they may not have said that, right? Because they may not believe it. Mozeliak has publicly expressed a lot of belief in Ollie Marmol to this point. In times I've heard him on the radio and things like that on KMOX. But at a certain point, he also says results matter. So could a managerial change without a Pobo change be in order? I don't know. I'm not going to rule out the possibility. But my point is, if that's something that, and I know Cardinals fans probably want to see both guys go, but if it's a case where Mo is insistent upon seeing out his contract, or more than that, Bill DeWitt Jr. is insistent, like, Mo, please don't make me hire somebody else just yet. Maybe that transition to Bill DeWitt, the third running the team, could come within the next couple of years. And if that's something that maybe you could change the Pobos at the same time, maybe that would work better for everybody. But I don't know what the circumstance will be. But my point is, if Mo knows he's staying, which he may or may not be, but if he knows that he is, but then there's still up in the air on whether or not Ollie Marmol is going to retain his role. If I'm Ollie Marmol, I'm not really up for the let's play Jose Fermin in second base every day. Let's play Luke and Baker just to kind of get a look at these guys, because that doesn't guarantee me anything about my job security beyond this year. So that's kind of a little bit of a sticky situation that, as long as there's communications between all parties, you're going to be able to figure that out between Mozeliak and Ollie Marmol. We're just not going to know the result of it, right, until the end of the season. If we see, is there movement to the coaching staff, to the managerial staff, to the front office staff, or is there not? That's going to come, or it's not. We're going to see that at the end of the season, or we won't. But it is interesting to think about the goals of the organization, if you're thinking toward 2025, are, hey, we got to see what Fermin is. We got to see what Luke and Baker is a little bit. We kind of think Goldschmidt's not coming back anyway, which I've maintained. I know there was a report that, well, they're going to have a conversation. Sure, that was the polite way to phrase it, and I'm not saying it's not true. I think there will be a conversation. I think it will be understood by both parties that it might be time to move along. It's very difficult to transition Goldie from MVP, going to play every day, to now you're in the Matt Carpenter role. The reason Matt Carpenter was able to do it is he left and played on multiple teams between the two stints with the Cardinals, so it fit a little bit better. I don't know that they're going to be able to do that with Goldie. I don't think they're going to really necessarily try very hard and strain to make something like that happen. So as a result, you need to know what it looks like at first base for Luke and Baker, if he can be that, or if he's just a DH. And then what his bat looks like as well at the big league level. You need to know what it looks like for Alec Burleson to play first base defensively, because if you're going to ask him to do it for 80, 90, 100 games next year, in the absence of Paul Goldschmidt, you're going to need to know what that looks like defensively before you make that decision. So that could mean more sporadic opportunity for Paul Goldschmidt. Does that lead to more wins, less wins, same amount of wins in 2024 when Goldie's been struggling? He might not even be the best option on a day-to-day basis to try to win the games. But what does Ollie Marmol think about that? And how does he end up trying to balance the requests from the front office versus, hey, I'm trying to show that, like, I can steer this ship back in the right direction when my job is probably under scrutiny, unless he's been told already internally that it's not. So those are the things that I would be wondering about at this point in time with regard to everyday lineups. Ollie makes them, but, like, obviously, if you lose twice in a row, it's just been known that everybody is going to be up for evaluation. And if they have this second losing season, it's far from just Ollie that they're going to have to look in the mirror and say, like, what do we view this to be? What do we view the hitting coach to be? What do we view the pitching coach to be? The rest of the on-field staff, the Pobo, the GM, the scouting director, the third baseman, the first base. I mean, everything would have to be under some level of evaluation, some more sharply criticized than others, perhaps. But that's all in the periphery, I think, when you see Jose Fermin called up for the Gorman move. Will he play? How much will he play? How do the Cardinals view it? Or is this just kind of we're just waiting for the obvious results to play out that guys like Fermin and Luke and Baker maybe won't be part of the consideration for next year. And that could be 40-man fodder that we see go by the wayside in the offseason. We don't really know at this point, but I think it makes perfect sense. Whether you think you already know what Luke and Baker is or what Jose Fermin is, you might as well find out and be able to see those guys in at least a semi-regular role. But at the same time, Ollie Marmol's still trying to win games because stranger things have happened. This Cardinals team does have talent. It's buried very, very deep beneath the surface right now. It feels like it's very much dormant offensively where they just have not been able to produce. But if you're the manager of the team, he said, we're not going down without a fight. We're not going to give in. So how does that balancing act end up playing out? I think becomes a really fascinating question and conversation. To this point in the season, we have not seen very much offensively from Jose Fermin in the big league level. 390 OPS. He's been a 924 OPS in the minors, but that's just one of those things that has not been consistently seen when he's gotten his chances. Just for the record, as of this recording, the lineup is out for the Cardinals on Wednesday. It is Donovan batting cleanup and playing second base, so no Fermin in the lineup just yet. So we'll wait and see what that ends up looking like as time goes along. I've teased it 2 times. I was going to read you the numbers of Thomas Saggese before I get out of here. More recently, 752 OPS for the season, but more recently, the month of July, he had a 990 OPS for the full month. Hit 349 with a 400 on base and a 590 slug. That is tremendous. And then the month of August, he's continued it, not quite to that level, but hitting 246, 307 on base, but still hitting for power, a 536 slug, which equates to an 843 OPS in the month of August. So if you look since July 1, Thomas Saggese has been basically like a 900 or better OPS, and that tells the story more so than his season-long 752 OPS. So I think he's ready as a big league hitter. I think he could potentially step right in and play every day down the stretch. But for right now, they're going to get a look at Fermin first. They're going to get a look at Luke and Baker. But if those guys don't actually see any starts, it's going to be very difficult to say, yep, we found out what they were and they're nothing. Like, we don't know that. But at the same time, we've seen the Cardinals take this strategy over and over and over again in the past with guys like Adolis Garcia. He's the first one that comes to mind. Randy Arozarena played a little bit, but not really. And then, yeah, we know what he is. We can trade him. We know what Adolis Garcia is. We can DFA him. We know what, that's kind of been with the quad A guys, the story. Now, Luke and Baker is not the same age as some of those players. He's like 26, 27 years old. It doesn't seem as though you have as much of a risk of Luke and Baker going somewhere and becoming something you didn't see the potential for him to be previously. But he is also OPSing 880 in the minors this year with 32 home runs. So who's to say that he couldn't, over a big league season, OPS 750, 760 and hit you 25 bombs? I'm not saying that's the most productive player in the world, but if you're talking about a short side of a platoon with Alec Burleson, and that's the potential that Luke and Baker brings, then he could take 300 plate appearances next year at the big league level and potentially hit you, 12 to 15 home runs. And that could end up being interesting, right? But until you get more of a look, I think, at him, it's going to be hard to know before you cast him aside that he is or he isn't that thing. Maybe the Cardinals feel like they're confident that he isn't or that he is, and they already know all that they need to know. But from the outside, it's kind of hard to necessarily believe that until you've given the opportunity to see it. And maybe they just don't think they want to. And if they want to cast somebody aside before really getting a good look at it, that's okay. That they run the team, not me. They run the team, not the fans. But at the end of the day, when you aren't producing with the guys that you do build around and that you do retain, there is some criticism that's going to be levied your way if the decisions continue to maybe go the wrong direction as they have with a number of players that they've cast aside in recent years. That's my thoughts on the whole Nolan Gorman thing. I think he's going to go to Memphis for a couple weeks. He's going to try to get right. Whether or not he does, he'll probably be back in September at some point when the rosters expand by a couple of spots. But let me know your thoughts on this move and the fact that it's not Thomas Saggese, but it's Jose Fermin that's called up in Gorman's stead. Appreciate you guys, as always, for watching the channel. We'll probably have some more later on tonight with more B-Schaeff Daily, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Until then, we'll talk to you next time. Peace.